I'm going to write this as clearly as I can, even though part of me thinks that clarity might be the worst thing I can offer you right now. If you're reading this, it's because you're like me, someone who prefers explanations over panic, logic over superstition. I used to believe that if something strange happened, there would always be a way to trace it back to something real, something explainable. I don't believe that anymore. They're real. And if you're seeing what I think you're seeing, then they're already close to you. I hesitated before posting this, not because I'm afraid of being called a liar or insane. I expect that. But because writing it down feels like confirming something I've been trying to deny for days, maybe longer. I don't actually know how long this has been happening. Time doesn't feel as stable as it used to. Let me start with something normal, so you understand that I am, or was, normal too. My name is Daniel. I'm 34. I work as a data analyst for a logistics company. It's not exciting, but it's predictable, and I liked that. I live alone in a second-floor apartment in a quiet complex just outside the city. I don't have enemies. I don't get involved in anything strange. My life has always been routine. Work, gym, dinner, sleep, repeat. Nothing about me should have made me a target. That's what I thought. The first thing I noticed was the sound. It wasn't loud. That's important. If it had been loud, I would have reacted immediately, maybe even called someone. But it was subtle, easy to dismiss. The kind of thing you hear and then immediately question whether you actually heard it at all. It happened last Monday night. I was sitting on my couch, laptop open, finishing up a report I'd put off all weekend. The TV was on, but muted, just background light flickering against the walls. Around 11:20, I heard something from the hallway outside my apartment. A soft knock. Not on my door, just somewhere out there. 3 taps, evenly spaced. I remember pausing, fingers hovering over the keyboard, waiting to see if it would happen again. It didn't. After a few seconds, I told myself it was probably one of my neighbors. Maybe someone getting home late, knocking on the wrong door, or trying to get someone's attention. It didn't feel threatening, just off. I went back to work. About 10 minutes later, I heard it again. 3 taps, same spacing, same softness. This time I stood up. There was something about the repetition that made it harder to ignore. It wasn't random. It wasn't someone fumbling with keys or bumping into a wall. It sounded deliberate. I walked to the door, but didn't open it. I just stood there, listening. The hallway was completely silent. I checked the peephole. Nothing. No one standing outside. No movement. Just the dim yellow light of the hallway and the identical doors of the other apartments, stretching out in both directions. I stayed there longer than I needed to, waiting for something else to happen. When it didn't, I felt a little stupid. I even laughed at myself, quietly, under my breath. I told myself I was being paranoid. I wish that had been true. The third time didn't come that night. It came the next morning. I woke up at 6:47 to the sound of knocking. 3 taps. This time it was louder. Not aggressive, but unmistakably closer, sharper, like it was right on the other side of the door. I sat up immediately, heart already racing, before I fully understood why. There's something about being woken up by a sound like that. Your brain doesn't have time to build a rational explanation first. It just reacts. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages. The knocking didn't repeat. I got out of bed slowly, already feeling that same strange hesitation I'd had the night before. Like some part of me was trying to catch up to what was happening, but couldn't quite get there. When I reached the door, I didn't check the peephole this time. I don't know why. I just opened it. The hallway was empty. Not just empty, still. I know that sounds like a meaningless distinction, but it didn't feel like a normal kind of quiet. There was no distant movement, no doors opening or closing, no footsteps from the floor above. It felt paused. like something had just ended or was about to begin. I stepped out into the hallway and looked both ways. Nothing. But that's when I noticed the door across from mine. Apartment 2B. I'd lived there for almost 2 years, and I'd never seen anyone go in or out of that unit. I'd always assumed it was empty, or maybe used for storage by the landlord. It was just there, part of the background. Except now, it wasn't. The door was slightly open, not wide, just enough to show a thin line of darkness inside. I stared at it for longer than I want to admit. Something about it made my chest tighten, like my body was reacting to something my mind hadn't processed yet. I took a step toward it, and that's when I heard it. 3 taps, behind me, from inside my apartment. I turned so fast I nearly lost my balance. The door to my apartment was still open, just a few feet away. I could see inside, my couch, the edge of the kitchen counter, the faint blue glow of my alarm clock still sitting on the nightstand in the bedroom. Everything looked normal, but I knew what I'd heard. The sound hadn't come from the hallway this time. It had come from inside. I stood there, frozen between the 2 doors, the one that shouldn't have been open and the one I had just walked out of. And for the first time, I had a thought that didn't feel like my own. They're here. Not for your apartment, for you. I didn't move right away. It's strange how the body works when something doesn't make sense. You'd think fear would push you into action, run, shut the door, call someone, but instead I just stood there, caught between 2 possibilities that neither felt safe. Behind me was my apartment, the place that was supposed to be mine, now carrying a sound that shouldn't have been there. In front of me was that half-open door, the one I had ignored for nearly 2 years, now suddenly impossible to look away from. 3 taps, still echoing in my head. I turned back toward my apartment first. I don't know if it was instinct or denial, probably both. There's a kind of fear you can reason with, and then there's the kind that rearranges your priorities without asking. Going back inside felt wrong, but leaving it open behind me felt worse. I stepped across the threshold. Nothing moved. The air felt normal, still, maybe a little too still, but I told myself that was just because I was paying attention now. The living room looked exactly the way I'd left it. Laptop open on the couch, a half-empty glass of water on the coffee table, my jacket thrown over the back of a chair. No sign of anyone, no sound. I closed the door behind me slowly, careful not to make noise, like I was trying not to alert something that might already know I was there. The lock clicked into place with a soft final sound that should have made me feel better. It didn't. I stood there for a few seconds, listening. Nothing. Then, cautiously, I walked through the apartment, checking each room the way people do in movies when they already know something is wrong, but don't want to admit it yet. Kitchen, empty. Bathroom, empty. Bedroom, I stopped in the doorway. There was something different. Not obvious, not something I could point to immediately, but it felt rearranged. Like walking into a room you know well and realizing, without knowing why, that something has been moved a few inches out of place. I stepped inside. The alarm clock still read 6:52 now. My bed was unmade, sheets twisted from where I'd gotten up too quickly. My phone charger hung off the edge of the nightstand, exactly where I'd left it. Everything was where it should be. Except, I moved closer to the nightstand. My phone. It was lying face up, exactly where I had left it when I went to sleep. But the screen was on. Not bright, not actively glowing, just dim, like it had recently been used. I picked it up. No notifications, no missed calls, but there was something open. A recording. The timer at the top read 00:07. 7 seconds. I don't remember starting it. I know I didn't. I would have remembered. I stared at the screen for a long time, thumb hovering over the play button, already feeling that tightening in my chest again. That same quiet warning I'd ignored before. Don't. That's what it felt like. But curiosity is stronger than fear, at least at first. I pressed play. At first, there was nothing. Just the faint static hum of a phone microphone picking up silence. Then, 3 taps. Clear, close, inside the room. My breathing. Slow, deep, asleep. And then something else. A second sound layered beneath it, so faint I almost missed it. A voice. Not speaking, not exactly. More like mimicking. Trying to match the rhythm of my breathing, but getting it wrong. Slightly too slow, slightly too uneven, like something learning. The recording ended. I didn't realize I had stopped breathing until I felt the burn in my chest. I dropped the phone onto the bed, like it had suddenly become too heavy to hold. That wasn't possible. There's no way something could have been in the room with me, recording that, without waking me up. No way I could have slept through it. No way. 3 taps. This time from the bedroom door. I turned slowly. The door was open. I was sure I hadn't closed it when I walked in, but I also knew it hadn't been like that before. The angle was different, wider, and beyond it, in the hallway, something moved. Not fully, not clearly, just enough to break the stillness. I felt it before I understood it. That same thought again. Not yours. You're not alone. I backed up without thinking, 1 step at a time, keeping my eyes fixed on the doorway. My heart was pounding now, loud enough that I could hear it in my ears, drowning out everything else. "Hello?" I said. It came out quieter than I intended. No response. Of course not, because some part of me already knew this wasn't something that would answer. Another step back. My leg hit the edge of the bed and I sat down hard without meaning to. And that's when I saw it. On the wall, just to the right of the doorframe. 3 marks. Not scratches, not exactly. More like indentations, evenly spaced. Like something had pressed into the surface, not dragged across it. 3. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was closer, reaching out before I could stop myself. My fingers hovered just above the marks, afraid to touch them, afraid of what they might feel like. They were fresh. I could tell without touching them. And they were at shoulder height, exactly where someone, something, would be standing. Behind me. I felt the air shift. That's the only way I can describe it. Not a breeze, not movement, just a change. Like the space behind me had been occupied without me noticing. I turned. Nothing. But this time, the nothing didn't feel empty. It felt crowded. Like something had just stepped back, far enough that I couldn't see it. I grabbed my phone from the bed, not even sure what I was planning to do with it, and moved quickly out of the bedroom. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The living room felt different now too. Smaller. Or maybe I was just more aware of the walls. I went straight to the front door and unlocked it, needing the option to leave more than actually leaving. My hand hovered on the handle. 3 taps. Right behind me. I spun around. Nothing. But closer. I could feel it now. Close enough that the silence had weight. And then my phone buzzed. I flinched so hard I almost dropped it again. A message. Unknown sender. No number. Just blank space where the contact should be. The same way it had been in the recording app. I opened it. There was only one line. "You opened the door." I stared at it, trying to make sense of what that even meant. And then, another message appeared. "You looked at us." Another. "We can see you now." I felt something brush against the back of my neck. Soft. Deliberate. 3 taps. Not on a wall. Not on a door. On me. I didn't scream. I've thought about that a lot since it happened, trying to understand why I didn't react the way people are supposed to. Maybe it was shock. Maybe some part of me already understood that making noise wouldn't help. Or maybe it was something else. Something they were already doing to me, dulling the edges of my reactions, keeping me quiet. Because that's what they want. Quiet. I slapped at the back of my neck and stumbled forward, nearly tripping over the edge of the rug. My hand hit skin, nothing else, but the sensation didn't go away immediately. It lingered, like pressure that had just been lifted, but not forgotten. 3 taps. I spun again, faster this time, breath catching in my throat. Still nothing. But the room felt wrong in a way that was no longer subtle. The corners seemed deeper, like they were pulling away from the center. The light from the window looked dimmer, even though the sun had fully risen by now. And the silence, it wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. My phone buzzed again. "You feel us now." Another message followed before I could react. "That's good." I backed toward the door again, my hand finding the handle without looking. I didn't take my eyes off the room this time. I didn't want to give them that advantage again. Because they were here. Not outside, not somewhere else. Here. The lock was already undone. I yanked the door open and stepped out into the hallway, pulling it shut behind me with more force than I intended. The sound echoed louder than it should have, sharp and out of place in the heavy quiet. For a second, I just stood there, breathing hard, staring at the closed door, like I expected it to move. It didn't. But I could feel them on the other side, not touching the door, not trying to get through, just there, waiting. I turned away from it slowly. Apartment 2B was still open. That thin line of darkness hadn't changed, but now it felt different. Before, it had been something I noticed. Now, it felt like something that had been waiting for me to notice it. I should have left. That's the part that doesn't make sense, even now. Everything in me was telling me to get out of the building, to put as much distance between myself and whatever was happening as possible. But I didn't. Because somewhere between the messages, the knocking, and that thing brushing against my neck, something had shifted. Fear was still there, but it wasn't in control anymore. Curiosity was. Or maybe it wasn't curiosity. Maybe it was influence. I stepped toward the open door, slowly, carefully, like I was approaching a wild animal I didn't want to startle. The hallway didn't change as I moved, but it felt longer than it had before. Each step took just a little more effort, like the air had thickened without me noticing. When I reached the door, I stopped. Up close, the darkness inside wasn't complete. It wasn't the absence of light. A kind of dimness that didn't behave the way it should, like it was absorbing more than it reflected. I raised my hand, hesitated, then pushed the door open the rest of the way. It didn't creak. It didn't resist. It just moved. Inside, the apartment was empty. Not empty like no one lived there. Empty like it had never been lived in at all. No furniture, no decorations, no marks on the walls. Just bare floors and blank surfaces stretching into a space that felt too large for the building I was standing in. I stepped inside. The air was colder, not by much, but enough that I felt it immediately on my skin. Behind me, the hallway was still visible through the open door. For a moment, then it wasn't. I didn't hear the door close, I didn't see it move, but when I turned back, it was gone. Not closed, gone, replaced by more of that same blank wall. That was the moment I understood something I hadn't been willing to accept before. This wasn't about my apartment, or the building, or anything that followed normal rules. This was about me. 3 taps. The sound came from deeper inside the space. Not behind me this time, ahead. I turned slowly, my eyes adjusting to the strange dimness. The room stretched farther than it should have, the far wall barely visible. And in that distance, movement. Not hidden, not subtle. Something shifting just at the edge of clarity. I took a step forward, before I could stop myself. Then, another. Each step felt easier than the last, like whatever resistance had been there before was fading. They wanted me to come closer. My phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. I already knew what it would say. But I did anyway. "We've been waiting." Another message. "You hear us." Another. "You opened." And then, you came. The sound happened again. 3 taps. Closer now. And this time, I saw it. Not clearly. Not completely, but enough. The shape wasn't solid. It shifted too much for that, like it couldn't decide what it was supposed to be. Parts of it stretched and thinned, then pulled back together, forming something almost human for a fraction of a second, before collapsing into something else. But there was a center, a darker place within it. And from that place, movement. Small, sharp, repeated, like something tapping from the inside. 3 taps. I stopped walking. Finally. Every instinct I had left screamed at me to turn around, to run, to do anything except stand there and watch. But I couldn't, because it wasn't just in front of me anymore. It was behind me too. I could feel it, closer than before, closer than the touch on my neck, right at my back. The phone buzzed one last time. "They're here." The message paused, like it was waiting, then finished. "For you." Something touched my shoulder, firm, certain, and this time, it didn't stop at 3. It kept going, not tapping anymore, pressing. Each contact came slower than the last, heavier, like whatever was touching me was learning how much force to use. The first 3 had been familiar, almost rhythmic. This was different, intentional, exploratory. I couldn't turn around, not because I was physically held in place, but because something in me understood that seeing it fully would make it worse. Up until now, everything had been partial, glimpses, sensations, suggestions, enough to scare me, but not enough to break me. That was the line, and I was right on it. "Stop," I said. My voice sounded wrong, flat, distant, like it didn't belong to me anymore. The pressure on my shoulder paused. For a second, I thought it had worked. Then my phone buzzed. "We don't have to." The thing in front of me shifted again, pulling tighter into a shape that almost resembled a person. Arms, legs, a head, but all of it unstable, like it was being held together by something just barely strong enough to maintain the outline. And then it took a step toward me. Not a glide, not a flicker, a step. That was new. That was worse, because it meant they weren't just observing anymore. They were adapting. I forced myself to move. One step back. The pressure on my shoulder moved with me. Another step. The thing in front mirrored it, closing the distance just enough to keep everything balanced. Like I was being held in place between them. My breathing had gone shallow without me noticing. Each inhale felt incomplete, like the air in this place wasn't meant for lungs. "Why me?" I asked. I don't know why that was the question I chose. There were better ones, smarter ones, but that's what came out. The phone buzzed again. "You saw." Another message. "You listened." And then, "You opened." The pressure on my shoulder slid upward, from bone to the side of my neck. I flinched, but not enough to break away. Because I couldn't, because they didn't want me to. The thing in front of me was closer now, close enough that I could see more detail, or at least more attempts at detail. The surface of it wasn't smooth. It rippled constantly, like something underneath was trying to push through, but couldn't quite make it. And in the center, that darker place, it was clearer now. Not empty, crowded. Something moved inside it in tight, frantic patterns. Not limbs, Not shapes I could name, just motion. And then, 3 taps from inside it. I froze. The realization hit slowly, like something sinking into place, piece by piece. The tapping wasn't random. It wasn't just a signal. It was imitation. They weren't knocking. They were repeating, learning, becoming. My phone buzzed again. We practice. Another. We get closer. Another. We get better. The thing behind me leaned in. I felt it near my ear now, not touching, but close enough that I could sense its presence like a pressure in the air. And then, it breathed. Not like a person, not like anything alive, but an attempt. A pull. A release. Wrong in every way that mattered. My stomach turned. "That's not," I started, but I didn't finish, because the thing in front of me opened. Not like a mouth, not like anything that had a clear function. It just separated. And inside, more movement, faster now, more organized, like whatever was in there had been waiting for this moment. My phone buzzed again. Something in my head pushed back then. Hard. For the first time since this started, I felt something like resistance. A clear, sharp instinct cutting through the fog that had been building around my thoughts. Run. Not think, not question. Run. I moved, not backward, sideways, breaking the line between them. The pressure on my shoulder slipped for a fraction of a second. Just enough. I lunged. There was no door where it had been before, but there was a difference in the wall. A faint outline. A place where the blankness wasn't as complete. I hit it with everything I had. For a second, nothing happened. Then, 3 taps. Loud. All around me. And the wall gave. Not opening, breaking. Like something thin, stretched too tight. I fell through. Hard. The impact knocked the air out of me, and for a few seconds, all I could do was lie there, gasping, trying to understand where I was. My apartment. Living room. Exactly as I had left it. Door still closed. Light still normal. Everything normal. I sat up too fast, head spinning, eyes scanning every corner of the room. Nothing. No movement. No presence. Just silence. Real silence. I scrambled to my feet and backed against the wall, heart hammering, waiting for something to follow. Nothing did. Minutes passed, then more. Slowly, the tension in my chest loosened, just enough for me to breathe normally again. I was back. Somehow. I don't know how long I stood there before I realized my phone was still in my hand. The screen was dark. No new messages. No notifications. For a moment, I thought it was over. That whatever had happened. A soft sound interrupted the thought. Behind me, from the wall. 3 taps. I closed my eyes. Just for a second. And in that second, I understood something I hadn't before. I didn't escape. I was let go. My phone buzzed. I didn't want to look. I already knew. Slowly, I raised it. 1 new message. No sender. No number. Just text. "We're not here." A pause. Like before. Then the rest appeared. Yet. Another message followed immediately. "You'll open again." And then the last one. "We always get closer." I stared at the screen until it dimmed, until the words faded, until the silence settled back in around me. But now I could feel it again. Faint, distant, just beyond the walls, waiting, learning, practicing. 3 soft taps echoed through the room. Not loud, not urgent, just enough. And this time, I didn't check the door.